the Mangawhai Community Park Governance Committee. We have not everyone here yet, but we'll kick off because we have quorum and we are at time. I'll start with the karakia. Kia hora te marano, kia whakapapapona no te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. So present at the moment we have Councillor Delavaris Woodcock, Councillor Wilson Collins, Sue Davidson, Tracy Dean, Morris Langdon and Councillor Jonathan Larson, and I'm Emma Curnow. I'll be in the chair today. At the moment, do we have any apologies? No. So we'll just note that Mike Howard and Georgina Connolly are both not present at the moment, but we've not received apologies. So we'll confirm the agenda. The agenda's been circulated and everyone's had a chance to look at it. Are there any issues with the agenda, or are we able to confirm it?
No issues.
Can I have a mover to confirm it then? Thank you. Aaron and Morris seconding. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay. Conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? If not at this point, then should something arise during the meeting, please do feel free to declare it at that time. There are no presentations, is that right? Cool. Okay, so we'll move on to item 3.1. That's the confirmation of the open minutes from the meeting on the 14th of March. Can I have a mover and a seconder so we can consider this? Councillor Wilson Collins and Morris Langdon again. Are there any issues with the minutes that anyone would like to raise? No, in that case I'll put it to the vote that we adopt these as a true and fair record of the meeting. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, moving on to the operations update.
Very sorry, everybody. Very sorry. Yeah.
Madam Chair, while Mike is settling in, may I be excused for the minute?
Yes, yes. Certainly. Okay, so Mike, we've done the minutes. And we're at the operations update, and I believe Laura is going to be presenting this. So I'll just get a mover and a seconder to get this on the table.
Cool.
Councillor Wilson Collins, I'm happy to second. So that's now on the table. Laura, if you could talk us through your operations update and lead that. Thank you.
Cool. Morning, everybody. The operations update. So obviously we have been starting to do some weed control, predominantly at this stage on the southern bank, which I put a little map in so that it made sense to everybody where I was talking about. That is in preparation of when the shed path comes through. We're getting that sort of area ready for the shed path to come through. We have got a contractor doing the higher parts, and then corrections are going to do sort of ongoing maintenance in the area going forward every Sunday. We are just working with them at the moment to when they can start, because obviously with COVID they didn't have any work parties, so they're just catching up on their different projects and getting those all sorted. The Mangawhai car park slip, that is obviously we were advised back in April regarding the slip, and we're just working with the bowling club and the club to see what can how we can help with rectifying the issue. The staff are also working with the MAS trustees regarding water supply. That will be ending 30th June from council, other than for the public toilets. There will still be water supplied for that. And we're just trying to work with the trustees so that they understand what is going to actually be required of them in terms of becoming registered water suppliers if they should wish to continue with that. There is quite a lot of regulations and liabilities, obviously, with that through the new Taumata Arawai. Historic village toilets, yay, they're all up and running. So, yeah, if there's any sort of questions, I'm happy to try and answer them.
Okay, I'll open this up to questions. Councillor Delaverse-Woodcock.
Yes, hello Lara.
Hello.
My question is about the Mangawhai Historic Park toilets, the new ones.
Yes.
And if people should use the taps for drinking water, like filling up a drinking bottle.
No.
Is it potable?
No, there are signs to say that they're non-potable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if people were to use that water, has it got any filtration at all?
I don't believe so. I don't believe there is any filtration.
Right. Thank you.
Lara, just a quick one regarding the slip.
Yes.
You know, I got involved a little bit, but is the communication channels between bowls and the club, is that pretty well resolved now?
We have received a contact from Chris on Friday. I had missed an email that had come through, and I had forwarded it through now to property just to run through what they had wanted to do, and they were looking for sort of an approval from council. So I have run that through our property team, and we should be getting sort of that sort of resolved, hopefully not too far in the future.
Fantastic.
Any other questions? I have a couple of questions. Lara, the trees that have been felled but not cleared, is there any progress on that discussion?
So when I met with Mr. Robinson, is it? Jenny might be able to help me with the name. Mike.
Yes,
I had spoken to him about it and said that I would go and have a look as to what was actually the intention, what was the rationale, why was it done that particular way, and also explain to Mike that there is going to be no quick fix, and we need to look into what we can do both in terms of capacity and financially, be able to tidy up that area. And he understood that. So he understood it wasn't going to be a quick fix, and it's going to take a bit for us to try and find sort of work outside the box, I suppose. So we are looking at different things. We've been talking to the contractor who's there helping with the weed control on that southern bank, about what they potentially could see as an option to what can we do, because obviously going in with big machinery isn't really an option. So we're working through it. We're trying to find a solution, and one that we can afford to do. So yeah,
Great.
it's going to require a few conversations.
Thank you.
Sure.
And just moving on, and still on the map, you've addressed the issue of the bank slip, but there is an issue of the fact that bank's been cleared and is now less stable because it has less plants to hold it together. What's the plan for that area?
Well, Jenny and I were talking about that, and once that shared path goes through, we are going to look at what we can do to address obviously the stability issues. But again, and John may be better sort of prepared to sort of answer more about the slip and that side of it. But there is the issue with the water pipe that goes through, that's kind of creating all this water coming through. So yeah, again, it's going to require a bit of collaboration with us all, but we are looking at addressing the plantings and stuff once that shed path, because we can't go in and do it now, because then it could all be destroyed with the path going through and the machinery going through. So it's just timing and making sure we're all working together on it. So yeah.
Okay, so long as that sort of stays a high priority, because there is a risk of further slips with that.
Yeah. Just through the chair, if I can add to Lara's response, that part of the land is on the land that the Mangawhai Bowls have as part of their virtual freehold. They have a perpetual lease, so it's anything we do there, we would need to get their permission. So we can't just go and do what we want. They're entitled to be asked and approve anything that council does. So it's not, we can't unilaterally plant it ourselves.
Yeah, I'm not sure they would object to us stabilising the bank.
Probably not, but we can't we can't
We'll
assume
work with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And Morris, you've got a question.
Yes, is the slip in danger of slipping again? And are there any health and safety issues? Has the slip stopped?
Yeah, I can probably answer that. I had a look at it the other day. It seems to have stabilised. The club has extended the stormwater pipe, which was causing the scouring and a lot of the damage, and there is some planting on the bank, which is starting to increase. Well, naturally, if you like, through things just germinating. It seems to have stabilised. I'm not saying that from any professional point of view, because I'm not an engineer, but from a layperson looking at it, it looks like it's settling down.
Does it need an engineer to look at it? And
we have had engineers to look at it, but their advice was to do what's been done in terms of removing the water source, which was creating the biggest issue. So by extending the stormwater pipe, which was to start discharging onto the face of the slope. So that's been extended, so it goes now to the ground, to the base of it, and takes the water away from there into the wetland. It seems to have, as I say, stabilised the area. It's not deteriorating from what I can see.
And John, are there any health and safety issues?
No, what the club, Lara alluded to it, that we got responded to an email from them on Friday where they'd proposed some actions, which was moving back the edge of the parking and manoeuvring area by about 3 or 4 metres, and they put some barriers up, concrete posts and things, so you're not going to get vehicles right on the edge loading that face, and so there's quite a buffer now being created for that. So I think it's quite good.
Thank you.
Councillor Laris-Woodcock.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 questions. The first is, I would like to be given another word in the English language, facine. I do not know what that means.
I googled it.
It's
a bunch of pole things or some kind of structure holding back.
Lara, would you like to contribute to what you mean?
Yeah, I had to look it up.
Removal of a racine, $1,200 it cost. Right.
Oh, but what a facine is.
Yes.
I had to do the same thing when I saw that come through. I was like, what is a facine? And so I will get you the definition, because I will probably mess it up, but it's pretty much just a poled structure, I believe. Hold on, give me 1 second. And that was, and maybe Jenny can help, it was to do with some of the work that Tim Manning is doing. So it's a whole heap of pipes or rods and stuff dealt with construction. So
yeah, it's actually through the chair. I've actually seen it because I didn't know what it was either. So Jim Wintle and Tim Manning actually took me out to have a look, and it's behind the historic village, and it's been used as almost like a culvert. So it's been a manually erected construction by the historic village trustees, and part of the consent to get the shared path through is that we need to remove that and put the appropriate drainage in, so that it drains back into the wetlands and runs its natural course. So yeah, it's really is just to me it looked like a whole lot of wooden structures that have just been kind of piled on top of each other, like almost like a kid's play area type, like a hut, that type of things.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's clear for you, Councillor Laris-Woodcock.
Yes, and my next question is for Lara, and the precedent we have of community work contribution, or doing some good weeding. Can that be lifted and shifted to other weedy areas and other weedy parks around the Kaipara?
For community doing weeding, did you say, sorry?
The corrections department.
Oh, the corrections.
Volunteer workforce, I'll call them.
So they, I have been talking with some of the supervisors and management in there to see what we can do to get them involved. So we were looking at also Potutarangi, some of the gullies in there to get rid of wattle and different things. So we have had a bit of a conversation. They do all of their work that they do is always on for not-for-profit and on public land or any sort of not-for-profit organisations. So yes, definitely we're going to start working a little bit more closely with them to get them to support some of these, especially the big ones. So this particular park, because it's so large, the cost obviously to ratepayer to maintain ongoing maintenance is huge. So if we can kind of get the corrections guys to kind of help support some of that and take some of that cost away so we can use that money towards other things, that's definitely the sort of angle we're going. And as I said, they're going to be going to Mangawhai Community Park every Sunday to help with that maintenance. But yes, we are definitely looking at other areas as well.
Thank you, that sounds promising.
I have one further question on the operations update, and that is just around the shared path as it goes towards the bowling club. So that behind the St John's and the fire service and up to the bowling. So where are we at with that, and when will we be ready for planting that area? Because we need to engage community as well in that side of things. Lara, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm going to probably hand this over to Jenny because Jenny's probably got a better handle on that.
Yeah, through the chair. So at the moment we are in discussions with the Laura from Forward Whangarei and the MAS group, corrections, and also the contractors, and Tim is the project manager. So we've organised a meeting for this coming Friday, where most importantly we need to get a plan of works from the contractors. We have everybody ready to go in terms of corrections, and as Lara said before, we've got her external person doing some of the maintenance as well. So we really just need to know when they're starting and how we plan the work so that we follow the pathway and not in their way, but we're able to plant and get the plants in the planting season. So like Lara said, our aim is to start at the southern bank and work our way over to the slip area or closer to the Mangawhai Club. So yeah, we will have a better defined answer Friday afternoon, and I'm happy to send something around to everybody so that you're updated. From then, we will also be working with our comms team in terms of delivering comms to the community. And we've also got some planned community planting days, as well as KDC has community team planting days organised as well, as we know the dates.
That would be great if you could share that schedule with all of us so that we can sort of either participate ourselves or bring along sort of any resources that we might have to be able to contribute on the appropriate days. Okay. And does that include the planting being done by the end of August?
Yes, that's the aim. Yes. Through the chair too, Mike Howard and I were speaking on Friday too about through our friends group meeting on the 20th, we're planning to really kind of encourage each of the organisations to also volunteer to do planting within the park as well, because the planting is taking place is not a MAS driven project. It's actually for the whole park. So encouraging all the organisations to be involved.
I think that's appropriate. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Any further questions from anyone on the operations report? Okay. In that case, I'll put it to the vote that we note the report. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, so we'll move on now to the project team update. Can I have a mover and a seconder to put this on the table? Councillor Wilson-Collins and Mike Howard seconding. Right, Jenny, if you could walk us through your report, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good everyone. Apologies for my voice. I'll try and keep my talking to a minimum. I've taken it that everybody's read my report. A lot of what is in here has already been discussed through Lara's operational report. So I'll clearly be open to any questions. And I think the added things that we've been working in through the project team has been with MAS and looking at their matched funding for the skate park improvements, so that we've been able to have meetings on site, our project and delivery team, and also the contractors' contracts who would be responsible for doing the development and finishing the skate park. So that's well underway, and Eros has a paper that he will present to council in July, and also MAS will present do a small presentation to explain what the extended area would look like. We've also been doing some work with the information kiosk, who are looking at opportunities on how they can utilise their site more efficiently, and I've asked them to present to the Friends group next week and look at what their proposals are. We've also looked at SEPTED in terms of the bank at the MAS car park, how the car park is operating as well. I've spent a lot of time there, personally as well, just kind of checking how everything's going. At this stage, there's not it's not been identified that we need a further SEPTED report, and the groups that are immediately involved in the two car parks and the bank are more than happy with having the bank there as a buffer, a wind protector. Roading, I've also had out to have a look at it, and they're also wanting it to stay. So Lara and I have been looking at how we can plant that out. One of the concerns that we've had, and so has MAS, is the two car parks, the linkage. Although the idea is that you're not meant to cross over as cars, people do. So I've had a contractor out last week, and I'm getting some quotes to get either bollards or some gabion walls or some kind of barrier that's going to stop people being able to drive through either car park. So that was a safety issue that was identified, and we need to address urgently. So they'll be done pretty quickly. The United Civil, this isn't in my report, but just as an add-on, United Civil has also agreed to remediate some of the damage with their machinery going into the car parks, and they're going to fill up the potholes and re-grab for the MAS group. Yeah, if you'd like to ask any questions, it'd be great.
Right, opening it up to questions. Thank you, Jenny. Any questions around the table? Looks like we're...
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, thanks, Jenny. There's a good lot of information there. The information kiosk, in terms of, and I appreciate that they're going to present next week, but has there been any discussion that you've been aware of moving, even if it is sort of, as they say, contactless, but moving the kiosk to the vicinity or inside the museum?
Through Chair, there has been some informal discussion, I understand, with the Historic Village. It isn't something that they've brought up to my colleagues or myself yet.
But maybe that'll come up next week.
Yeah.
That was a question I had as well. And yeah, I have a question, Jenny, on the infrastructure under health and safety. You say that you're doing a review of health and safety practices of the licensees within the park. Does that include council as well? Support Council, because obviously, yeah, with the United civil stuff, that's created some health and safety issues, and yeah.
Yes, yes, we have been, Lara and I have been working both with council and also working alongside EROS and Simon. And now that Glenys, we have a new health and safety officer within council. Glenys has been coming on site as well and looking at the health and safety, not issues, but just health and safety overall as a PCBU, and also working with organisations. So I think it's definitely taken traction now that we have her in place as well.
Right, right. I'm just checking if I had any other questions. With the Tracks Trust, do you have any further comments on, you say staff are investigating possible solutions? Anything sort of more expansive than that, or are we really at early stages?
Early stages. So what Lara presented in her operational report, we've done the walk around. We've had a look at the issues that have identified, and we've also, Lara and I have also met on site with the contractor and looking at how we can mitigate some of the issues that are identified, what would be the best possible solutions. That does come with budget, so we're working towards how we can resolve some of those issues, but the lines of communication are absolutely bad, so we can start looking at them.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair, one more. Jenny, is council aware that the new crossing across Molesworth Drive into the proximity of the historic village doesn't actually line up with the area that the historic village have got set aside to pave, so you know that it is all symmetrical their side, and that crossing, I mean, it probably doesn't matter at the end, but I think that the whole idea was to get, you know, make everything symmetrical, and it doesn't line up.
They, Dave Frederick did contact me when he noticed that, and I got in touch with our project manager. My understanding is that that was the only way, the position from the roadside that they could put it in. If you notice on, as you're going up towards the golf club, you'll see a large tree there. So if they couldn't move their path because there's already a tree there. So the historic village are in the process of being able to put a path in, so it's to work alongside the actual pathway and the actual crossing from Molesworth.
I'll have a look for that tree.
Yeah, have a look when you go up. You'll be able to see clearly what they mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Any further questions? Anyone want to make any comments? Sort of summing up? Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Jenny, and thank you for persevering this morning, presenting with us. My throat feels sore just listening to you. So thank you. And just the fact that the report is just so clear that it shows how few questions there are. So yeah, it's really wonderful to see all this activity happening in the park, and your report to us has just been really awesome. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Any other comments? No, well, just from me, thank you, Jenny. This it feels like there is progress. Sometimes there's a lot of work to be done before progress is visible, but it feels like a lot of that work is happening, and that we're starting to head into the visible phase, which is great. So yeah, I'll put this to the vote that we make this report. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Great. Okay, so next we are introducing Mark, who's going to come and talk to us. It's one report, but it's really two parts. One is the implementation plan, so that's the stellar design that's been done and going through that, and one is the master plan review, which is a wider project that will take place over a period of time. So Mark, if you could give us an introduction, just outlining those two parts of your report, and then I think we'll start with the implementation plan, because that's the immediate stuff, and then go on and talk about the master plan review.
Yep. Okay. So.
Oh, sorry, can I just get someone to move a second to get this on the table? Forgot our process. Mike and Councillor Delavaris Woodcock. Right. Mark.
Yeah, I'll do my best to try and speak through the mask. Bear with me. So for those who don't know me, I'm Mark Schreers. I'm an infrastructure strategic planner with the council. So I do, amongst my portfolio of work, I seem to do all of the reserve stack planning, reserve management plans for different parks and for different reserves around the district. And a great blessing what you guys have got here, I think, if I can say so, is that Mangawhai Community Park is not a reserve under the Reserves Act. So you've got a big piece of 1970s legislation there which you just can ignore. But you do have a master plan, which is essentially a reserve management plan by a different name. And you follow a lot of the same process, or have done to date, around how you've consulted with the community and how you put that together. And that's now getting to being close to a decade old, now, that plan. There's been a lot of implementation of it, and a lot of great progress has happened at the park, and that's sort of starting to make the two a little bit out of step with each other. So what we're proposing here, one is we'll go and look at a review of the master plan, but that process will take a bit of time. So in the meantime, we want to make an implementation plan, which is just sort of an implementation plan for the current master plan, and it's sort of setting out clearly what the implementation of the master plan should look like over the interim period before we go and finish reviewing the master plan. So I'll think about it. The way I think about it is, if you think of like a painter sitting here with a canvas and they've got the picture in their head and they're painting the picture. With Mangawhai Community Park, you've got a lot of artists all painting their piece, and all those pieces need to be the same big picture. They all need to have that same big picture in their head. So that's kind of what the implementation plan is intended to be there, and it is the document is mostly pictures, concept plans, sort of showing what we're wanting to see happen at the park. And as decision makers, when you get people coming to you and saying, passionate community group, I want to go and do this, you guys need to say yes or no to that. And as we need to be looking at, saying to them, showing them that plan, Jenny, which is working in the community, needs to be showing them that plan and saying, this is the implementation plan, this is where we want to head with this. And does what you're wanting to do there fit with that, or could it fit within that? So for this part of the meeting, if we can maybe run things a little bit informal through the chair, so that we can have a bit of dialogue and discussion. And Jenny, John, do by all means contribute, because you can, I'm sure, answer questions a lot better than I can on some of these matters. But the intention today is to get your feedback on this draft implementation plan that we've put before you, so that we can go away as staff and fine-tune that and then bring it back to you for adoption. So today, the purpose of today is to get your feedback on that.
Thank you. What I'm going to suggest we do is that we go to the actual document, the implementation plan, and maybe just take it page by page and discuss whether anything bubbles up out of each page. So we've got, so has everyone got that in front of them?
Are we able to bring that up on the monitor, I wonder, and for the sake of the recording, maybe Jenny or someone, are you able to share it, or Tracy? Yep. See your screen, we can have it up there and go through it together.
Well, I think the first couple of pages are just where the park is, and I think we're reasonably familiar with that. So we'll go to page 25 of the agenda, which is the general arrangement plan.
I've got a question about page 2 of the report.
Oh, okay. I'll go back to page 2. Of the report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of the plan.
Of the plan. Okay.
Just on the red line which says proposed Mangawhai coastal walkway. I realise it's a large scale plan and it's only sort of indicative, but having been through this process already with the sort of shared path route that looks like the path heading towards the heads is going hard against the coast as opposed to along the footpath. Is that what's intended there, or is it just the scale not showing?
Sorry.
We traversed at some length the options around that area and found that it was too difficult to actually go underneath the Pahuta car was around the coast. I know it's not directly related to Mangawhai Community Park, but if we're going to put it in a report, I don't want it to sort of mislead public understanding.
So what I'll do there is I'll go back to Tim Manning, and I'll just make sure that Stella, because I think when they put together this may have been some time ago, and might have been based on the planning at the time. So I'll go back to Tim and I'll get him to check where that is.
Yeah, that'd be
and
good,
make sure,
because it's
make sure that's captured correctly.
Because there were some locations where we couldn't actually get all the way around and stuff like that. So I don't know whether some of those things are sort of being intended as a coastal walkway, and how they're differentiated from them.
Okay, the Chair, you're correct, and what we're looking at a bit more is actually access down to the area, so that rather than actually walking around where we can't, at least if we can get people down to the harbour.
Yeah. So in fact, it may be an old
Yes,
line.
I think it is.
Yeah. So that's an action point. If we could just get that shared path as up to date as, the coastal walkway route as up to date as the contemporary thinking, given that these things sometimes flex more as we go along.
Well, it possibly, if they merge more than it shows there, because the shared path that we that landed ultimately getting around the heads, it was always an intention that just it wasn't going to be feasible to put it in the coastal marine area.
So through the Chair, I think that's the blue one,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it stops at Street. Yeah.
That would be down at the campground.
It doesn't actually continue around to the heads beach on this way anyway. We need to clarify whether it's supposed to or not.
Okay.
I'd also wonder about the shared path in terms of going down Inslee Street. I've always been led to believe that we did have in our longer term strategy to have a footbridge going across at Inslee Street, across the bridge, on the side of the bridge. And so it doesn't seem to show up on here. I know it was further down the track in the plan, but it was in the plan to getting softer towards
That so I guess the action is, Mark, if you can take these other paths that are outside the park and just make sure that those routes are as accurate as they can be, that would be great.
Good.
Morris.
Morris Langdon. The shared path, the blue dotted line, is that now entirely on the from beach to village? Is that now entirely on the other side of the road from the park all the way? Because there was discussion earlier on that the path might cross, the shared path might cross and actually come through the park, the recreation park, and then cross back. It's the intention now to keep that path entirely on the other side and just have these crossings across.
So that I don't know. I haven't been following the detail of that project as it's been going through implementation. But one, Jenny, John, are you familiar with that?
Through the Chair, the aim is where the crossings come from the Molesworth Park, is Molesworth Drive shared path, is that they will then crossing over and then link with the shared path through the park. And then my understanding is then it will link back up as it develops and go back out onto Molesworth.
So will the plan show those link points? I imagine if that is an intention, that need to be a crossing somewhere near the golf club entrance, so that we can actually get onto the shared path at the bowling club?
I think,
Those-
Morris, if you go
Scroll
to
down.
page 30 of the agenda,
Is there challenge?
there is, although there is some debate about whether that
Because I couldn't quite pick it up.
is.
If you want to scroll down, Tracy, because that is shown in here, and then if we want to cover that.
Oh, Jenny, yeah.
Is this it?
If you
Keep
go
going.
right to page 30
going.
of the agenda, that shows where the bowling club car park is, and so there's a crossing. Oh, there we go.
This one?
Now I know that there is some debate around the safety of that location as a crossing point. So when we get to that page where we can
Yeah.
note that is, and I believe that the golf club are willing to discuss, so enabling the crossing to happen off the golf club rather than off the car park there.
Yeah.
So that may mean that there needs to be some work around expanding that bit of shared path to take it further down.
Yeah, I'm not sure quite where the shared path implementation is at in terms of detailed design. You sort of have your concept design. I think there's also even got like a little information centre there, some off-street car parking, and then the crossing.
Yeah.
I don't know to what extent there's sort of a concept of where they want to aim, and to what extent they've gone through detailed design in terms of car manoeuvring space and so on, and lines of sight, and there's obviously a bit more to go through with that. And with this implementation plan, I think we want to keep this as sort of a while it is quite detailed. Some of these more technical aspects around lines of sight, vehicle manoeuvring space, and so on, we sort of it's sort of dependent on a bit of design in terms of what can be achieved here.
Yeah.
If I may, Madam Chair, I have had some conversation with Tim Manning.
Okay.
And I'm meeting with Tim on this because, I've raised the issue. Well, as I understand it, there is no plan at the moment beyond
this.
the car park
down
there. And that's the next step that Tim and the team of engineers are working on. I've expressed concern that a crossing at the apex of the hill is a tragedy waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. So maybe we can make that as a note that we are, as a group, perhaps not entirely comfortable with that as the location for the crossing, and that we understand that further discussions are going on about moving it further down towards the golf club end of things, or beyond the golf club
closer
entrance.
to Wood Street.
Yeah. And that if it's possible to put the proposed crossing on the design there rather than where it is now, that would better reflect our intention around safety. And that does sort of bring into it, obviously if you've got a shared path, it's a wide path, and so it then creates some issues around car parking and the information centre and things like that. Yep. But those are, I think safety has to come first on this. So while we're on this page, are there any other issues around this page?
Yes.
While we're here.
So number 26, there is a red square around a tentative or possible location of a library.
Sorry, I'm talking about this page that's just up here now. Because if we can just do one page at a time, then that's going to help us to sort of get through it without jumping backwards and forwards, and just help Mark keep track on what needs to be discussed further. So any other questions on this particular page? No? Okay, we'll work our way backwards. So go to the next page up. So this is the one, and this does get into what you're discussing, Councillor Delabarris Woodcock. So we've got the red dotted line, which indicates.
Well, I prefer if we refer to the overarching picture, which is on page 25 of the document.
Yep.
And 5. So are we all there?
So this is, this one.
We've got a big overview of the whole park.
Yeah.
This one?
No.
Page 25.
25 of the agenda.
Sorry,
one more.
Come up as an agenda, so I'm just having to.
You're on the right
Page
one,
4.
just scroll
There
up
you go.
slightly. That's the correct one.
That's the one there. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So, I reread the vision. I always go back to the vision of the park as and the words predominantly natural. I'm concerned that the predominantly natural aspiration for the park will be impeded by this library being positioned there, for it will add to the already prevalent ribbon effect development along the road, which is visual from the road and from the public aspect that shows not predominant nature, but predominant development and structures, concrete and asphalt. And so while I know that the community needs a library, I would like the consultation that proceeds about this implementation plan to draw the community's attention to what will be lost if there is another building and structure in that place, which could be linked to what will be the wetland area, and a very lovely unintruded by development area or portion. And you know, the park is a journey of experience, and if you're in it, or if you are in the road area as a pedestrian or in a vehicle, you want to be drawn into it. And so that is what I like to contribute. That and I guess I put it back to Lara and the engagement team when they go out for talking to the public in the park. You know, would you like to see a library here?
I think if I might just jump in, I think at the moment that has been identified as a possible site. I think that there is a whole lot of discussion that needs to go on with the community about, is this a good place for the library? I think, and Sue, you're involved in the library location as well. Do you have any thoughts you want to add to this?
My understanding is because the property manager, John Burt, is supposed to be leading this, so I think we're going out fairly soon on where it's likely to be, and obviously we're also looking at offices as well. So that's linked, and so it still has to go through community consultation.
So once again, we have to ask what do we value, what do we want, what's the vision 100 years from now? Is the park for it to be predominantly natural and verdant, or is it to be a place for the offices of a council, which may not exist, or the need of a community to have a library? We need to think long term on this.
And I think
I'd like to ask Morris what he thinks about that.
Well, Victoria, you keep going back to this point, but the very first master plan, although it did talk about the park and it did talk about the landscape, also had this as a strip for development for public facilities. However, I do agree with you on this site. I think if this is an implementation plan, we should be careful about talking about this site for a specific use. Look, it can be a development site, but I think the pros and cons around any sort of council activity here need to be thought through in terms of the head, the park and the village. If things start going in here, you're going to wreck the other centres around the place, and that's a discussion, a far bigger discussion for council and its officers to sort of have to think about. Is this a good place for a library specifically? I don't think it is. There's a lot of traffic. It's right on the corner. But that's just by the by. It's personal opinion. I just think, though, we shouldn't, if this is an implementation plan, we shouldn't be fingering, a library
a possible.
across the board, yeah.
Yeah,
Through
and
the
I
chair.
think I'd probably lean into that a little bit, that is, because this is an implementation plan, so this is the things we are doing, and the things we're going to tidy up to make this right. Whereas the library is a discussion that we need to have with the community. One, about should it be in here at all? And if it should, where in here should it be? And there may be other places. I mean, yeah, without being an engineer or thinking these things through, I'm thinking, is this an opportunity to stabilise that bank by putting a council building there that looks down the park? You know, sort of, so there are different opportunities, but I think it's very early in the piece. You know, we know that we want to deliver a library to the community. We know that. And we know that here is the most cost-effective place in this park somewhere because it's council-owned land and we can, without having to buy land. But beyond that, I think we're quite early in the piece. So should we take this reference out?
So through the chair, what leads you in the intent with Stagan area there? What we're trying to do is there's a separate piece of consultation around where the library should go in Mangawhai. And that's a question of should it be in the heads or which centre should it go into? But then there's also, you know, the question of if Mangawhai Community Park were chosen as the location, where in the park?
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what this is sort of alluding to, is if this was chosen as location, that would be the appropriate part, or would it not? And that's sort of what this is trying to do, is flag in space and saying to the community, if you choose Mangawhai Community Park, this is where in the park it would go.
I guess for me, this document is about, for want of a better word, this is a done deal. These are the things that are here. This is how we're going to tidy things up to make it all join up nicely. Whereas the location of the library is something a lot more tenuous and it's a lot earlier in the discussion. So I wonder if it would be better to separate those two processes. So this, we adopt this, here it is, this is the guide for this ribbon development strip. Whereas the library is we're just so much earlier in the piece.
Do you want it out? So do you want it out completely, or do you want it to
No.
be still identified as a potential future development spot?
I think it should be flagged as a future development
Okay.
I agree.
site, without being specific.
Okay, so just say future development site. Okay, and then the library discussion can say, we could put it in this possible future development site.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question of the committee? So I've served on the committee coming up 3 years, and I had never known that there was an acceptance or a plan of that Molesworth Drive to have development along it. I didn't know that. Is that where would I have been possessed of that information?
But there's very little on that plan that isn't in the master plan. Very little.
And it must, as an implementation plan, it must be consistent or not, at least not inconsistent with the master plan.
Yeah, and so there's very little that isn't already in the master plan. So what this implementation plan is about is capturing everything that's gone on already.
Yes.
Because we're sort of pushing at the edges of what the master plan has set out.
Yes.
And trying to tidy it up and pull it together and give it a consistent feel, because at the moment it doesn't.
I understand that. Okay, I better put my question better. So Morris pointed out, I returned to the issue of the ribbon development when that has always been the intention to use the roadside portion to enable community service.
It's in the plan. It's on the master plan. Yeah.
On the master plan.
Yeah, the design of the master plan is pretty much what's happened here. There's some things which have been modified, but it's not far off.
So why does it talk in the report about ad hoc development in this implementation? That the whole point of this implementation is an interim measure until the master plan is finalised in 24, and the reason why the implementation plan and the future master plan needs to happen is because we've had ad hoc development of the park.
So when we say ad hoc development, what we're
In the
talking about,
report.
yes, what we're talking about is everyone's got their own design, their own view of how it should look. So what we're wanting, what this process set out to do at the beginning was to give you the sense that when you walk into the park, wherever you walk in, you know you're in the Mangawhai Community Park, that it looks and feels and is joined up in a way that's consistent. So this isn't about enabling new development. This isn't about changing the master plan. It's about joining it up in a consistent look and feel and experience.
With pathways and sign making.
And benches and park bench.
Consistent visual.
Yes,
furniture.
Yeah, because at the moment, if you want to get from the museum to Mares, there's no way for you to do that. So it's about joining the things up, connecting things together and giving a consistent visual experience as you move through the park.
And so everything that happens in the park needs to actually be in alignment with the connectivity and to forward it. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what this part is. And then the review of the master plan, that's when we ask the bigger questions about, should we put sports fields through the rest of the green areas? Those sorts of things. Those are big questions that will set the agenda for the next 10 years beyond and beyond.
In the remainder of the period. Okay, thank you very much.
Good. Okay. So is there anything other than the discussion around the possible library site that we want to, as Morris suggested, just say that that's a possible development site and then the library discussion can be separated out from that? Is there anything on this page?
Particularly maybe do look at the bush areas because the following pages I think go into detail around some of the museum area and so on.
Yeah.
But this is probably a good place to look at the bigger picture and particularly the bush area.
Could I just ask the controller of the heat pump?
I turned it down already. I couldn't find it. I stole it. Yes.
Thank you.
I turned it down last time. I've been looking for it for an hour. I've been hiding it.
Okay, Morris.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Good point just raised then. The park is some 30 hectares. This work by Stella is all about the southern edge of it. So if this is an implementation plan for the park, surely we should be considering the flat bit on top and all the bush and everything else. Is it a little bit of a misnomer to be calling this a community park implementation plan when I know there's been some preliminary work done by previous council officers looking at the bowl on top and all the park. Sorry, I just put it on the table there. Maybe John's got a comment because I believe John was involved in looking at some of the sites on top there.
Sure. Is it just a naming issue?
Well, I think it could be, but the park is the park. The park is 30 hectares, and this is just the southern.
So, through the chair, can we, to help at Morris's point, which I think is very important for discussion, on page 4, there's a key, and on the bottom it says future Velma Road extension, and there's some blue dots.
Yes.
Is that what you mean by the flat area that could be?
Well, not quite, Victoria. There's
Where do you mean?
I mean right at the top of the park, and previous council minutes.
Near the golf course.
We're looking at potentially a site for a rugby field and other things. So it's a little bit of survey work done up there. John, can you help me on this?
Yes, through the chair. Look, originally from recollection, when the plan was developed, there was some sites which were kind of identified as development sites throughout the whole 30 hectares. but it was very light in terms of, I guess investigations, no geotechnical or anything like that. It was just identifying sites that didn't have anything significant ecologically more than anything. So I'm not sure that any work's been progressed since that time when the I think back about 2015 the plan was developed.
But nonetheless, there is land up there available for development, potential development, which will come more on demand if Selma Road goes through.
John, is that land currently used by the golf course? Is that part of their? No, it's not.
No,
that.
The golf course. There's a paper road that runs around the back of this whole block, and also the golf course itself. Some of the tracks roughly follow the paper road for a portion, but I guess it's kind of got parked because it doesn't have easy access at the moment, as you say, Morris, because it's at the back of the park. So nothing further has been done, and I don't know there's any firm plans about developing that paper road into into an actual road.
Can I suggest that the just and put this in front of the committee as to whether it might be a solution that we just rename this the Southern Zone Implementation Plan, because I think there are lots and lots of questions about the rest of the park and what does the community want to do. But I don't think that's what we're doing here. I think that's the master plan review where we actually say, okay, here's the rest of the park. What should we do with this? Should we just focus on making the most beautiful sandy Manuka bush, and beautiful walks that go through it, or do you want sports fields on it, or? So Councillor.
Yeah, I think to inform the context of the development plan, we should have an overview. I mean, I just pulled it up on Google Maps, and there you go. You've got it. It's going to be very easy to use that, so that even if we did end up marking stuff on there like future sports field area indicative or whatever, and I'm not saying it needs to happen now because it's a little bit like the library, we haven't talked about it, but that way we go, this is actually the park in its entirety, and it's 30 hectares and it's got a golf course.
Yeah. So maybe if you put one more page in with everything including the golf course.
Yeah. So through the chair, I think what might be an action there is expand that drawing out a bit to show the park.
Yeah.
But in terms of things, some of the things you're talking about there, I think might be beyond the 2 years life of the container. And that's probably into that stage where you would need to do the master plan. And so the proposal is that over this coming summer, we'll be going to the community and saying, how do you want to see that area used? And then coming back and working through it as part of the master plan.
So if we have one map that's a context setting map that says here's the whole park and this implementation plan deals with this bit, the southern zone. Yeah.
Can I, Madam Chair, thank you. Can I be abreast of the knowledge of, is it correct that the golf course is 45 hectares?
I believe so. That's right. I think, John, isn't it? 45?
More or less.
No, the park itself is 30 hectares, and that includes the land that's used for the wastewater treatment plant.
But not the
not the golf course. The golf course itself is 45, is what the council is asking.
Oh, the golf course, no, 50 hectares.
Oh, okay. So we've got a 30 hectare community park and a 50 hectare golf course, and they're both on freehold title.
No. The park is freehold title. The golf course is reserve land, which has underlying Crown ownership.
Oh.
But council has been appointed the administering body of that reserve. So.
Right.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I would just like to endorse the fact that this is an implementation for a master plan, and just point out that the original master plan did the whole park. Then we need to make reference to it in here.
Yep. So I'll expand that view out to show the whole park. We do want to capture the whole park. So if we think back to the time when the master plan was done, the park was at that time largely sort of bush, and a lot of the focus that we went into it was identifying which of these areas of bush have a high ecological significance, and which areas do. That was a large area of pines and a large area of eucalypts. And if you look at it today, we've sort of moved in, that's where development was directed to. And so it was very much about directing development away from those more protected areas.
Yes.
And yeah, I think, as you say, we need to push it, we need to show this the whole park. But in terms of how we could develop those other areas, that's probably beyond the 2-year life of this.
Yeah.
So we're only looking at having this thing having a life until the new master plan is adopted.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'm the new kid on the block, but it is certainly my clear understanding that the implementation plan specifically related to completion, if you like, of the ribbon area. And as has been said, I think for the point of Morris, is that other stuff may come up, maybe ad hoc, maybe not, in the master plan review.
Yes, yes. So there'll be hopefully lots of ideas that the community come forward to, and then it'll be to this committee or whatever committee takes on that in the next council to decide what to do with those ideas and how to distill those into a new master plan. But so, yeah, I think it is important that this implementation plan says specifically, here's the whole park, and this plan deals with the southern zone. I'm going to call it the southern zone rather than the ribbon thing, because the ribbon thing has connotations.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay, so let's move to the next page, which is the page that has the museum and historic village area laid out. Jenny, are you able to move us along? That's great. Perfect. Thank you. So there are, just in terms of this page, there are discussions going on between the museum and the Daring Trust, and now also the Arts Trust, about where, if there was a Daring Museum in this area, where it might go, and the synergies between the different organisations. So they are starting to work as a kind of precinct group, which is really good to see. And so this is interesting because this could change. So I guess this is what we know now. We don't know what the outcome of those discussions is going to be. So while it's likely to change, I don't know that we can change this plan based on what may happen. So I'm kind of happy to go out with this as it is, on the understanding that we may change that.
Madam Chair, may I ask you again, as background, when we come to this plan, because this is, you know, a key area of, you know, the history and the culture of the area, was there any consideration given to an overview design, you know, industrial design layout, to have the right pieces in the right place? I mean, as you said, it may well be that the Daring location changes and possibly swaps with the art area and that, but at the moment, that's dependent on those parties.
I think the answer is no. There's never been any kind of precinct plan for this area, and I'm happy to see that those different groups are now working with that sort of much more front of mind. Is that how does it all work together, with a focus on the person driving in through that driveway, knowing nothing about Mangawhai, what's the best experience that they could have, as opposed to, you know, the different groups sort of having their own spaces. It's how do we create a consistent, cohesive, good experience for the visitor coming to that space. So that's, I know that they're discussing that. The only thing I'd suggest is we have a dotted red line around the proposed art studio lease area, and we don't have one around the proposed location for a new building to house the Daring. So I'd suggest that for consistency, it would probably be a good idea to put a red line around that, just to indicate that there's a tentativeness about that.
Madam Chair, may I also ask, the council has given, as I understand it, an LTO for the arts group.
I suppose I know it's a license to develop, isn't it?
Well, I thought the license to develop
Where are
was
we with
for
that?
the dairying.
Sorry, with the arts and the dairying, where are we with the various?
Sorry, just through the chair. So neither group have a development agreement or an LTO.
Right, so
Okay,
shifting
Yeah.
things around
so
is
that's easy.
gonna, I mean, there's, yeah, if they impose on the museum lease, then there'll be, or license to occupy, then there could be issues
Yep.
to resolve there, but those two, yeah, okay.
Thanks, John.
Any other questions on this page or comments, discussions? No? Okay, in that case, we'll move on to the next page, which is focusing in on the mayor's area. Any comments, amendments that anyone would like to see on this page?
Madam Chair, I have one query, but it falls in between the last page and this page,
Yeah.
because in the middle is an area that is designated as drainage-wetland.
Right.
And my understanding is that actually is not wetland, it's man-made. It was created as a drainage area.
So you thinking that between this and the museum?
And the museum, historic village.
Right,
And
yes.
it is shown on,
Yes,
clearly on this map here, and it is shown as, a blue water area.
yeah,
Given that it was man-made when Molesworth Drive went through, and it was actually created as by the council as a drainage swale, are we correct in calling that, and actually restrictive in calling that, a wetland? And actually, could that not be part of the master plan, but actually developed potentially as a water-wise recreational area? And I think that if we leave it as a wetland, when it's not really, there are restrictions on potential recreational use. I'm thinking about model boats, things like that. But and in all honesty, I haven't been there, so I don't know the size of it. But I just wonder whether referring to it as a wetland is unnecessarily restrictive.
Morris, do you have any thoughts on that?
I know Jim Wendell did. I can't
Yes.
remember what his opinion was though. Which council's determination about a waterway now? I mean, I'm just not sure whether that counts as a waterway, even if it is man-made.
On the general map of the southern zone,
It's certainly full of water.
it's classed as point 11, approximate location of the existing drainage/wetland areas.
Yeah.
Some servicing stormwater off Molesworth Drive.
So it could be, I mean, depending on, I'm not sure what consents might be needed, but you could look at modifying it. Depends on what you want to modify it to. If you want it to be open water and access to, do model boats, or if you want it to be wetland and not open water, or wetland open water in the middle, but no access, just a lookout over it. But I think it's going to be a question of what is wanted there, and I wonder if maybe it's beyond the two-year horizon, and so it needs to be consulted on later. But
It's part of the master plan.
also within your implementation plan, if you're identifying it as wetland drainage, that could probably be any of those things. So it's not nailing it down too fine, but if someone wants to come and say, let's choose that as the location for the Mangawhai library, you might say to them, well, actually on the plan it says that area is going to be a wetland drainage, stormwater management area, whatever you want to call it, but it's not a library, for example.
My point was very simply, I would hate for it to be unnecessarily restrictive because we've got the word wetland in there.
I think we've had many discussions about this when Jim Wendell was on. I think the advice from officers and consultants was it kind of doesn't matter how it was created, like is it a natural or a stormwater generated wetland, but it still counts as a wetland and therefore it still comes with the burdens that of all the protections that those have. So I think it's a good question for the review. Because there are a number of wetland / drainage areas identified here, and it may be that one of them would be a good pond. Yeah.
And
as
that
opposed
was
to,
also noted, Madam Chair, that, you know, there are 2 other
yes.
designated wetland areas, so it's not as if we're taking anything away.
No, and it's so. I guess it's just that the discussion in the review would be, should we do they want to be kind of wilderness wetland areas, or do we want it as a little bit more managed to be, for model boats, or the like?
Well, sorry, Chair, I guess the important point is, should we flag it as some sort of form of development, future development, because of, is it available for some form of future development or not? Which is, I think, what Mike's asking, it really comes back to, is it classified as a wetland? Any of the council officers help us on this?
Yeah, I do know that it's been the subject of a lot of discussion, and we have had NRC out to have a look at whether they identify it as a wetland. And the discussion at the time was yes, as Anna said, if it's a wet area, they classify it as a wetland. But
Just
in the future,
through, sorry, Jenny. Just through the chair, I know there has been national guidance is a national policy statement which has further defined what are wetlands and essentially prohibits development around areas that are wetlands, and so it's significantly broadened the scope of what's now termed or designated a wetland. That's a layperson's interpretation of that.
So perhaps for the review, we can include some specifics around what a wetland is and whether these are definitely wetlands, and if so, what are the options, and if one of them is, one or more is less than a true wetland, again, what are the options? So it's just about teasing that out so people can make suggestions that are realistic based on what it actually is and isn't.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just, are we specifically talking about, so on the general arrangement plan, we're talking about number 11?
Yes,
wetland.
There are 4 of them, or 5.
The one directly off
Molesworth
Drive?
Yes, so that one in behind the historic, or along up from the road, up on the road from the historic village.
Because on the master plan, I don't know if it matters anymore, but apparently that was a proposed sculpture pond.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just thought that's worth going into the discussion.
So
in between the master plan and now, we've had a whole policy on wetlands come out.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
but what I'm just saying is when this master plan came out, it was the idea was that it would be kept as
it would be a
preserved of some description.
Yeah. So I think we're not going to resolve that here. So but it's a good topic of debate for the review. Okay. So we'll move on. So we were in the mayor's view. Any other topics of discussion on the mayor's view? Oh, good. We'll move on then to the emergency services zone. Are there any thoughts here? I mean, largely this has been developed. The red dotted line might need to change because if we're going to use the red dotted line for proposed areas, then we shouldn't use it here because both those buildings are in place. So everyone comfortable with the location of the paths, some of which are already in place. The car parking is pretty much in place, although the landscaping needs to be done to look like that.
Madam Chair, Morris, at the last meeting, you raised an issue you had concern about on the roadside in front of me, so with the planting versus the.
Yeah, it hasn't gone away. I was going to take it offline.
Is that the
Mike,
bank
yeah.
area?
I don't really want to bring it up in this meeting.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you for remembering.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, so no comments on this one, and we've already dealt with the next page, which also includes a couple of further wetlands. But we talked about this page in terms of the location of a possible development site. Are there any, in terms of the pathways and the sort of suggested planting, etc.? Any thoughts here? No? Okay.
Yeah, I
Oh,
just have one comment
yes.
about this red dotted line, which is, I'm sure it'll get sorted out because there's nothing being actually done
Yes.
as far as
Yes.
logistics, but I really hope it doesn't encroach on the wetland like it does in this map.
It wouldn't be allowed to.
Yeah, wouldn't be allowed for,
So there could be an issue with
Also,
that site.
it's also questionable as to how accurately that reflects the boundaries of the wetlands as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's residents at a high level saying this is the area to go for if we wanted to build
Yes,
another.
there's a possible development site boundary to be clear.
So really, there could be an issue, a possible issue with how large that site actually
Yeah.
is.
Yeah,
Is that what I'm hearing?
absolutely.
It could end up being you can't actually develop enough to even put something here.
To my mind, you could probably fit a library on there, but you wouldn't fit a library and offices.
And offices.
And a car park.
And a car park, yes.
Yeah, it's going to come down to feasibility of what's wanted. And if you're going to say future development area, so essentially what you're saying is for the next 2 years, if someone wants to build something, you've already got an ambulance station and fire station, obviously, say the Coast Guard or someone wants to establish, if they can fit it in there, great. If they can't fit it in there, you haven't got anywhere else identified. Talk to us when you were reviewing the master plan. Give us your ideas, but in terms of right now, that's what we would put aside for you.
Yes, yeah. And so we need to get on with discussing with the community where to put a library, because if we identify that as a proposed development site, there may be others that want to get their act in gear quicker than that. Yeah. But ultimately.
Just on that point,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, for clarification, would we, in the whole subject of the questionnaire, the connection with community about what they seek and how we phrase all of that, but would we be looking to put forward suggestions, examples of council officers, library, I think lead with those. This is some different subject, but I'd just like to, I think that there are some things that we need to be leading when this whole questionnaire does go out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the discussion about the library could actually sort of go ahead much quicker than the actual review. It can be uncoupled from that. And go forward as its own discussion, because there is an urgency around that in terms of securing a relevant site.
Yep, and when you come to do your master plan review, then you will want to ask the community the questions of what is an appropriate use of this area. Currently, you've got everything there from a wastewater treatment plant to a fire station to a Mangawhai activity zone and a museum. So what else? So if, for example, if basketball wanted to build an indoor basketball court, is that an appropriate place, or do we want to direct sports to a different area?
Yeah.
That's a question which is going to be part of that master plan review.
Yeah.
And that's it next
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'm just sort of thinking about what everybody's saying. I wonder if it would help if this plan was able to identify the lease areas of the current occupants, because I don't actually think there's a lot of land left for development, and that would be quite significant. So I can see there's been an attempt to put a lease area around the museum. I know the historic village doesn't have a lease area, but there might be some spare land at the top of their block between them and the wetland we've been talking about. Would be interesting to see the mayor's lease boundary.
And just on that, I wonder, Ginny and John, we've got you there. There are clauses in those licensed to occupy templates. It doesn't apply to every case, but some of them I think that you can allow, or council can still allow other groups to utilise the land as well. It's used in common, and it's, you know, and to what extent it gives them exclusive use of the land around their buildings and within that footprint, and to what extent others can maybe establish still within that footprint as well.
Yeah, certainly the museum licensed area is exclusive. Historic Village, they have the footprint and curtilage of their buildings, so they have exclusive possession of that area. Mayor's has a big area and it's not an exclusive arrangement either. But whereas fire service would, for example, Fens does. So it's, yeah, as you say, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we indicate how much land is left available for development down Molesworth Drive?
At this stage, probably don't need to. It's more about saying some what we envisage seeing happening in the next 2 years. So it's also looking at projects by these existing groups. Mass wants to add an extra this or an extra that. Does that kind of fit with the plan? And then when we get into that master plan review, that's when you're going to want to start saying, okay, how much land is actually left available? How much do we want to be available? What other uses do we foresee we might want to make space for? Those questions are going to come up at the next step.
So through the chair though, for the proposed library, that's likely to not just be a library, it's a library, meetings and community hub and cultural centre, because if we're going to utilise money through the Better Off package, then we have to have EV involvement, and they've indicated they want to have a cultural, I suppose, impact, and it might be in terms of how you're welcomed into the building, and also meeting rooms that can be used. So it might be bigger, so it'd be good to understand what the size of that's likely to be, the footprint, to see if in the park it's even, there's even land there. And we may have to find other land at the heads.
Yeah, because I'm just sort of looking, so if you take the scale of the museum from the general map and say double that.
Yeah.
We don't look at the building, look at the car parking.
Yeah,
car parking,
yeah,
so
and you would need probably double that.
A lot of car parking.
Yeah. So yeah, it starts to look a bit questionable, the doability of putting all of those facilities in one.
Yeah, I suppose the property manager has to sort that out.
Yeah.
How big are we looking at for the Better Off package? What's that? And then whether that is an option, because we can't put it up as an option if it's not going to meet the requirements.
Is there anywhere else in the park that you would want to suggest as the future development area? Or is this basically it? Because
I think
that's
that
the area it has been designed to fit it.
I think that really comes into the review. I would be unwilling to say, let's take the middle and turn it in, or, you know, that we want to do the whole development there. I think it really is that those areas that are relatively untouched, I think we're better to just go out to the community and say, these areas are relatively untouched. What are your ideas on them? Rather than going out and saying, we'd quite like to put a council building in the middle of it all, you know. They may come back and say, and yeah, we might go out and say these are the relatively untouched areas. Some of the things that, you know, could be used, they could be used for is, and do a list of and encourage people to sort of comment on that list and any other ideas they have. But I'd just be quite unwilling to jump in and say, here's an untouched area that we'd really like to do this with. Is that?
Good.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think, you know, it'll evolve out of what community wants.
Yeah.
What they see as priorities.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do hear you say that we need, you know, we need to make some progress on the on the library thing, so we do need a kind of an idea of scale. Because when we go out to consult on the library, if the park is not an option without encroaching into the undeveloped areas, then we need to go out to the community saying, here are some other ideas. Yeah.
I think you probably have to be broad and just say, is it going to be at the village? Is it going to be at the heads? Or is it, and I think we've crossed out Mangawhai Central, but, and then we just go about and we find land, because there will be land coming up for sale, or council may have some other land, but yeah, it's probably more likely to be purchased land.
Okay.
Just to that, thanks, is I think that you've got to also, if you're going to raise that subject of ultimately council officers, you've got to be able to put out there that there is a civil defence implication.
Yes.
That might well be the ultimate determinant of where it's located.
Yeah, through the chair, that definitely will be where offices are located. I'm not sure if that's where the library.
Oh, yeah, no, true.
So it depends on whether.
So they may not be the same.
Yeah. Same site.
There's still nothing to say we can put a library here and the offices somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. The last page is worth looking at just in terms of, this is the kind of style guide that they're suggesting. Is that right, Mark? So the last page is the one with signs and styles of planting and styles of seating and fencing.
We discussed that, didn't we?
So is there anything on this page that, so if anyone goes, oh no, that doesn't work.
Previous discussions on how the pathways were to be dressed and centred around the reuse of some of the materials in the park, mainly the gum trees and use of soy and stuff like that. So I think the image in the bottom right left-hand corner of this is sort of not sort of painting a consistent picture. What's the latest on did the consultants get briefed on that sort of strategy when they produced this report?
I'm not sure, I wasn't involved with that
Yeah,
aspect. I wonder if, do you want to include this level of detail? But maybe do we want to include to go into this sort of detail and this consistent sort of design elements? And if we do, I put it to you as to what your thoughts on that would be. So I think is, sort of what your thoughts on design elements might be. Is so should we start with the plantings? Do you want to be very much native plantings, or do you want to be?
Well, the next page is the plantings, and I'm totally happy with the suggested planting that's all native, coastal, native stuff, which is, I think entirely appropriate. But it was these kind of, I just, like you, Morris, when I looked at that bottom left fencing, I went, oh,
these images,
a bit Karaka.
These images don't accord with, I think, discussions in previous committee meetings. And I just wonder what briefing was given to the consultants that produced this report, because I think, I personally have a bit of an issue with some of these images. Jenny, John.
Through the chair, I'm not sure what briefing they were given. This has come through a previous GM and then come to Mark and myself. But we could check that.
Well, I actually wonder what briefing would you give them? More what I want to get from this
meeting.
Well,
it's not what anybody personally would give. It's the sort of tenor of the discussions through this committee when this issue was previously discussed. I know Jim So, you know, he had a conversation around, and he was all into reuse,
Yeah.
you know, those gums, marking, some point in the park marking trails or stuff like that. So when you look at this page, and signage was a big one as well. We talked about consistent signage through the pathways, because it's really the paths and the signage and the seating that are going to link, that are going to visually express the whole thread through the park.
Yeah.
And you know, that was linked to use of recycled materials, which is mainly the gums, and anything else local. But these images could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
When I look at them, I'm not sure about the
Not sure about
rusted
any.
steel stuff, the rock walls. They're just kind of not of Mangawhai. And I think, yeah, there needs possibly, yeah, the signage styling, I could probably go with that if it was using gum tree wood and things like that. But the rusted steel and the rock walls and the karaka fencing just kind of doesn't fit. Jonathan?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Morris. It's just like a little bit of a random scrapbooking exercise that just so easily put together. I think maybe if we want to have in the implementation plan some guidance, maybe we need to use some words rather than just some pictures. So
Yeah.
describing some of the things that are being said here about, I mean, there may be some issues with using recycling because with all the logs are already gone. I know they do deteriorate and they are hardwood, but they're not going to be a long-term function. So whatever, but maybe we just need some words here around consistency of sign.
Yeah.
Why
So is that doable to go back to them and sort of say not there yet on this page?
Well, we won't be going back to the consultants.
We'll do it ourselves.
In-house now.
Okay,
But
great.
yeah, so what we can do is, yeah, I think noting those key messages of consistent and cohesive.
Yeah.
And keeping the same look and feel throughout the park, and reusing what materials are available.
And probably also having a little bit of Kaifra branding in there as well.
Yeah.
Subtle references.
My input is, yeah, the rust and the russet colours to me signify Australian kind of aesthetic. And there is a vernacular New Zealand design aesthetic that I recognise, and that is using to best effect wood that has a dark stain that's in contrast to greenery or verdant background. So they seem to work really well, you know, set off flaxes and ropo or whatever, you know, kawa. Does everyone know what I mean about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what I would like to see, and that is, and pick up Morris's point of a coherent or consistency of. But yeah, just looking at there's an attraction about dark wood and greenery.
Yep.
Martin,
Set
did you-
each other off.
Everyone more on
Totally
the same page with that?
Yep.
Martin, did you
absolutely.
say this is moved in-house at the moment?
Yeah, we brought it back in-house.
So, yeah, I just think, you know, it's all about the material on the paths, it's all about the signage, it's all about the seating, the lighting, and overall, it's more about trying to find an expression of something that signifies this place. So it sounds to me like it's a subject of an external consultancy, unless you have some fairly high-level group designers.
So yes, so if we want to do like a lighting plan or something, we'd have to go out to consultants.
So I think it's all integrated.
But in terms of like, you know, the cohesive signage, the cohesive seating, the cohesive pathing, that kind of thing, that's something which we can capture in this document,
Yes.
and then we can and it's also to say this sort of you know, high level style guide of the darker timber against the greenery. and the native green colours, right? So taking that as your high level style guide, capturing it in this document, which is reasonably high level, but then giving effect to that. So then comes to when you say doing, for example, when you're doing your shared path in your path developers, you're going to your consultant and saying, okay, we need to engineer this, we need to consent this, we need to design this, and we need to look at procurement and say to them, this is our design guide for this park. So we want it all to be consistent. We don't want to patch this colour of concrete next to what has been done previously. So that's when we bring it to the consultant at that more detailed design stage.
Can I throw in something as an interest? Does everyone know about the railway sleepers that you can buy in Mangawhai?
Oh, okay.
On special, amazing resource. So they are, because that's that look. I don't know. I think that would look well in the park.
And it's recycling materials as well.
Yeah.
Well, Madam Chair, may I suggest, I mean, this is going back, but I'm quite happy to talk, just so we're bringing forward what was best known from the past. I'm quite happy to talk with Jim and have his open, view on what was always intended, because what Morris has raised, I know he talked to me about the use of timber, but it's rotted, gone, you know. So that was part of his view on the gums and things like that. So at least I'm happy to do it on behalf of all of us to bring forward some of those aspects so we have a connection.
Well, that's fine, Mike, but I just think this page sucks.
Yeah.
So if you can't find anything more representative of what we want this park to be, then I think leave it off.
Yep. And
Even if you could put a photo of some of those sleepers there, photo of a gum tree, photo of something, just in words, just change that page.
If you were able to do that and circulate that to this committee, because obviously we don't want to sort of drag this plan any slower than it's already been, because I think we're like 3 years into it. But so that this committee can just have a look at what you've heard what we've said, and it really is just it's like a Pinterest page. What are some of the styles that we're interested in, and then we can give you the go ahead for that to be dropped in, because I really don't want to slow this down anymore.
Well, what we'll do, because this is going to come back to the next meeting for adoption.
Okay.
So that gives us time to make these changes, and we'll circulate the whole thing back.
Right.
But yes, particularly this page, and you'll take.
Sorry to help things out. Just the only question I had: are there any existing design elements that you'd want to be replicated? That like is there something already in the park that could actually be put on this page? I don't know. But it may not be. Maybe we wanted to replace everything, but if there was already some seating or some.
Well, it's not about replacing things. It's about sort of encouraging those groups when they are redoing some planting that they now have something to focus on to guide them.
But I was just suggesting if there's something already in the park that you want to replicate throughout the park, rather than trying to find a stock photo.
Yep, and don't hesitate.
Is there actually something already there? Are there elements already there that just want to be expanded through the park?
And don't be shy to send me photos if there is something that's done very well.
You should set up
I bet there's a trackie sign.
Yeah.
I bet with a little walking person.
There are some company.
Unfortunately, they get stolen.
Regularly.
They look good above the mantelpiece, do they?
Yeah.
People. That's why we don't have nice things. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on this? All right.
I have a question in the actual report.
Yes.
And I assume it's going to be a bit of a stupid question, because through the time frame, through the process schedule, it says if this or a similar committee is re-established and then blah 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 everything carries on. I'm assuming there's no expectation that there wouldn't be.
Not that I'm aware of.
And if there wasn't, what's the plan? Is there a plan? Like what happens then? What's the
if there was no such committee?
Yeah,
Maybe a question for you, Sue, for high level stuff. In terms of governance of Mangawhai Community Park. So at the end of the triennium, the committee is dissolved. It gets re-established at the start of the next triennium, and it's a question of the time frame that's been put forward. I put it together on the assumption that we would have a similar committee with similar terms of reference and similar sort of meeting schedule. And when I put for council officers, when we put together a time frame like this, what we're largely putting it together around is meeting schedules. It's mostly sort of, I'm sitting at the meeting schedule and thinking, okay, can I get all these jobs done before that meeting? What's the next step in the process? Can it go to the next meeting, or do I need to defer to the next meeting after that? And that's sort of what we build it around.
Yeah.
So it's sort of been based on the assumption that we'll have a similar committee with a similar meeting schedule. But that's not something which is nailed down as confirmed. That was sort of the assumption made there. If we have a different committee, we'll have to relook at it around that, I suppose.
right.
I don't know if it's
Maybe you could just reword that to be the committee that has responsibility for this park.
Yeah.
Through
Because
chair,
somebody
if
did it.
there isn't a committee, it will go through council as required.
Yeah.
So it's that what
Well,
the report's trying to allude to is that if there's no,
I think
he's had to make the assumption because that's where we are now.
But we do
But
have the
there's
connection to the community.
I was
Yeah.
agree. So yes,
So there'll
the
always
assumption-
be a process.
The assumption makes sense. I was just curious if there wasn't this committee, would that happen? It would go to council. That's there'd be a process because if there's a statutory requirement, which depending on if it's a reservative plan.
in this case, there's no statutory requirement to have a master plan.
So it may not work that way, but that's what the next council has to decide how they want to govern their, when they make that decision around their committee structure.
And through the chair generally, unless the group itself, committee itself has suggested that it's done its task and it basically shouldn't be replaced, the council will look at the merits of implementing a new committee.
Thank you.
that would be important.
Well, I suppose one thing you could look at because the next the next meeting we'll be asking you to go out for consultation with the community and say, give us your ideas on how that park should be used, and we'll put them together into a review of the master plan. If the following council was to decide not to have a master plan because there's no legal requirement to have one, you'd still have all those suggestions which council staff could refer to and the council could be aware of. So you still get a lot of, but I don't see that eventuating. But you would have all that information and be able to put it to good use even then. So it would never be wasted.
Yeah.
I mean, I still refer to submissions or see my colleagues' submissions from years ago that people sent us, in the community sent us their ideas. They're all on file. It's great. It's a great resource.
I have to suggest, Madam Chair, that having no community engagement in such a, would be an anathema. But there is one point that I would like to raise here, the timeline. We're talking 2 years before we get to enactment. And appreciate, Mark, what you've said about, literally tying in with meetings and things like that. But I would encourage us to be forthright and really making that a lot quicker. I'm not used to council process.
Clearly. For us, that looks like, so is this based on the reserve management plan process?
Yes, so based on the reserve management plan process, so with the Reserves Act, you've got you have an optional. I think it was the Amendment Act made it optional to go to the community and say, give us your thoughts, give us your suggestions. So that if you know very well what the community want, then you don't have to undertake that step. In this case, you can do anything, right? But you've got no act to force you to do things. But I was going to suggest go out to the community, especially while council is reforming after the election. It's an opportunity to go out to the community over summer, ask everyone what their views are. Then the next step from there is to draft it all together. And I wanted to make time for a lot of consultation with all the user groups and be able to go to them and sit down with them and say, what do you see us doing here? And also, as we're bringing this together, is this looking like it's coming together well? And then once you've got your draft together, then you're going out and it's gone through the through a reasonable amount of workshopping as well, having the ability to actually sit down and talk through it with the committee, assuming there is a committee, work through it with them as well, workshop it, and then going out to the community for public consultation on it and saying, what do you think? Did we get it right? Tell us if we got it right, tell us what needs to change, and then having the chance to make changes based on people's comments, and then through to adoption after that. And so I think probably what makes the process so lengthy is allowing time for lots of engagement with the community and with the elected body.
If it was possible to truncate any bits and pieces along the way without losing that community engagement, that would be great. But yeah, I do understand that. Are there any other questions on the review process or timeline? Because when we adopt this report, we're going to a recommendation here. We don't have a recommendation. There is no recommendation. We're just noting the report. Okay. So
Madam Chair, just on that, one quick point. We have a Friends of Mangawhai Park meeting next Monday, and I do propose as part of the agenda to table the whole questionnaire and to try, at least from the Friends point of view, start getting some inputs so that we can share.
Yeah.
So that will start from that side of it next week.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'd like to attend that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. In that case, I think we've moved and seconded that we note the reports. Everyone ready to put that to the vote? Yep. All right. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. Thank you. That's the end of the business on the agenda. So I'll finish with the closing karakia. Kia tauna manakitanga a te mea naro, ki runga ki tēnā o tātou, kia mahia te hua mākihikihi, kia toi te kupu, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori, tihei Māori ora. Thank you everyone. I think that was